Hi students, this is Feke, coming with a recording of our lecture where we will go deeper into how to write academically correct essays. This is our fourth lesson together where we are studying a warning to the future, and today I am going to teach you about what's known as participle clauses. The goal with this lesson is that we want to improve our writing skills. In order to do that, prior to this recording, you will have read a text on social media. You've studied its vocabulary, and now we are going to go deeper into a writing style and technique known as participle clauses. And this is used to show cause and effect, reasons, and event order. Once done with this recording, you will carry on to a set of grammar exercises to hone your skills. As mentioned, before this, you will have covered the reading comprehension, so if you haven't done that, please go back to that part of the lesson. You can, as always, find the lessons on Feke Online, and in this case, it's lesson AWF-4. Until this point, we have learned about scientific writing as a part of structuring an academic essay. And today we are going to focus on the language point of view, studying participle clauses. During the lessons up until now, we read several articles, studied their vocabulary, as well as discussed their contents. And in a few lessons' time, you will have tests covering vocabulary, grammar, and reading comprehension. Your final goal is to be able to write a 400 to 800 words academic scientific essay. A successful student will be able to read about these texts that we've covered and to use them explaining your topic in order to predict the future. And here I will specifically be looking at how you are able to use sources to build your arguments. Today, we will also look at the other aspect, which is the language point of view, where we are going to become better at writing an advanced form of essay using these participle clauses. Here's a quick rundown of the schedule until now, and as you can see up here, we haven't had any lessons this week due to the class being at Forskarskolan. And as you can see here, that I'm not able to participate in our classes the 3rd and the 4th due to the national tests in English 6. After we have had these lessons, you will carry on studying reading and vocabulary skills, testing them, and eventually here on the 17th of April, you have a reading comprehension test. Then we'll have a few lessons to prepare ourselves, and then in quite a length of time, the 8th and the 9th of May, you are going to write your essay. And as based upon the previous feedback that I received from you, we are going to write over 2 days, meaning that after you've finished on the 8th, you can consider some changes or additions, and you carry on reading or writing during the 9th here. And as we have done previously during the course, you are allowed to bring with you 200 words that you have pre-written, and some of these writing exercises that we have together, where it says writing exercise here, number 3 and number 6, will be used to help you guys create an idea what you would like to mention over here. Now, let's look at these two sentences, shall we? Since the students have been participating in weekly classes, they began mastering English. Participating in weekly classes, the students began mastering English. Now, what is the difference between these sentences? If you look at them from a from a structural point of view, we can see that this one is shorter than that one. Secondly, we can see that they begin in different ways and that they also have different structures changing. For example, the article here from the until the pronoun they. So there's a few different reasons why we do this, and you might ask, okay, so which is the better of the two? Well, when you write an academic essay, you are going to be aware that you do not have the freedom of writing as many words as you wish to, meaning that you have to be economic with the word count. In this case, since we are trying to become better at writing in a more precise manner, the one on the right would be preferable. And this is due to the fact that we want to express the same amount of content but with fewer words. And that is why this one on the right here is known as a participle clause that helps us to express in a more accurate way the same content but with fewer words. A participle clause is a kind of a verb that also functions like an adverb. The purpose of it is that it helps us create more precise sentence structures. And furthermore, they also help us indicate ideas such as cause and effect, reasons, and event order. During this lecture, I'm going to cover 4 ways that we can create participle clauses. The first one will be what's known as the present participle, or the ing form of a verb. The second one will be the past participle, also known as the third form of a verb. We'll look at the perfect participle, having, plus the past participle. And finally, we have a preposition together with the ing form. And all of these are great at helping us develop our language, since they can be combined with the dependent clauses from when we create compound, complex sentences. Let's begin with the first one, shall we? Here we're going to look at the present participle, the ing form. And usually when creating a participle clause, and in this case the present participle clause, the dependent part of a sentence comes before the main clause, or the independent part. Let's consider this sentence, shall we? Here you can see that I have highlighted what is the different parts of the sentence, but also what belongs to the subordinate or the dependent clause here, and then the main one. Remember that a main part of a clause or a sentence is going to be standalone. So we could say the students began mastering English, and that would have been a perfectly functioning sentence right there. But here you can see that I've added different parts, giving us a cause to why the students have mastered English. So since they have been participating in weekly classes and blah, blah, blah. So participating in weekly classes, the students began mastering English. The meaning of this is because the students did this, and so on and so on. But due to using a participle clause, we could omit parts of this sentence that we understand without using these words. Essentially, we can cut off pieces that we already understand since we are using this kind of participle clause. And the present form uses the ing, so you see here participating, like that. Here is another example. We have the full sentence, stepping onto the stage, I took a deep breath. The reason why I took a deep breath was since I was stepping onto the stage. Here you can see that also we omitted certain parts of the sentence. So stepping, the ing form, gives us an idea why these events happened. And that's it for the present participle form. We only use the ing at the beginning like that. Now the second way to create a participle clause, also known as the past participle, is using the third form of a verb. This also helps us illustrate cause and effect, and also can help us understand how to create a passive form of a sentence. The passive being that the subject is less clear, or that there's not a subject being the one completely visible to the reader. Now, let's look at our first example, shall we? Here we have the verb rise. And you can see that I've highlighted the third form of rise. So rise, rose, risen. And here, students, it's important to be able to know how to change the tense of a verb. And this is something that we're going to practice together. But the third form is the one that we will focus on here. And here we have a sentence where we have the independent part. So the dead were walking the streets. And then we have the dependent part here, where it says after they had risen from the grave. And now you can see that we have the same verb here from rise. We have risen. And similarly to what we did during the first part, is that we want to put that at the beginning of a sentence. It would look something like this. And it would then turn into risen from the grave, the dead walked the streets. And you can see here once again that we've reduced the amount of words used. We still have the structure of a dependent and independent clause, creating a shorter sentence but with the same content. Or here we have another example, eat, ate, eaten. And we have this sentence here. So because it was eaten too quickly, the meat was hard to digest. And we want to put eaten at the beginning of the sentence, and it would sound like this. Eaten too quickly, the meat was hard to digest. Once again, we omit parts of the sentence since it's already expressed through the participle clause. We save some words, but we retain the meaning. The third form is known as the perfect participle clause. And here we include parts that we've studied until now. And we use this generally to indicate whenever an action has been completed. And we use having together with the past participle. Here's an example of teach, taught, taught, with the sentence, Fikke slept soundly after he had taught the entire day. We move having to the beginning. We take the verb taught, put it after having, and it creates the perfect participle clause. Having taught the entire day, Fikke slept soundly. So the indicates a action being finished. Here's a little bit of a tricky one. We have the verb read, or read, 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 spelled the same, pronounced differently. After reading the news, I predicted we'd go to the moon again. We take having together with read and put it at the beginning of the sentence. Having read the news, I predicted we'd go to the moon again. And once again, we omit certain words, make it a little bit shorter, but we keep the original meaning. Finally, we have the participle clauses where we combine prepositions together with an ing form. This helps us to illustrate the place, the direction, or the time something has happened, or, for example, if we wish to introduce something to a sentence. Here are a few examples of common prepositions. Some of you are familiar with prepositions indicating direction, such as up, down, below, under, on the side of, and so on. But also, we could use, which indicates time, after, before, and so on. Here, I've highlighted the ones in yellow that I'll be using in these examples. Once again, we have the main clause, or the independent part that can be standalone, and then the other parts that aren't. Here, known as the subordinate or the dependent clause. Here we can see that I use after together with the ing form of exercise. So we know that after exercising, I took a shower. Helps us understand why things happened, but also the direction or the time that it happened. Here, another example, we can see that this helps us understand the time aspect as well. So before eating, before ing. So before eating dinner, I washed my hands for 30 seconds. And finally, while eating, I watched YouTube, giving us an idea how these relate to one another. And to be honest, the function here is quite simple. We put the participle clause at the beginning of a sentence, generally, in order to help us create a sense of cause and effect, and also the reason for why things happen. Now, I'm going to take this and to increase the complexity slightly, combining it together with compound complex sentences. We have learned that we create these compound complex sentences by joining together two independent clauses, one dependent clause, and a fanboy. Now the fanboys, they consist of for, and, nor, but, or, yet so, therefore fanboy. And we can swap these around as we see fit. Now I'm going to try to illustrate how you can use a participle clause as a part of a dependent clause in order to make them join together, helping you guys create more varied ways of expressing yourselves when speaking and writing in English. Here we have an example sentence. That's perfectly fine. So I slowly read the book, and I focused, and I finally understood the book. All right, great. We can see the reason why you understood the book by reading, focusing, and then understanding. And here I'm going to try to illustrate how you could divide it slightly and making it sound a little bit more natural by adding a participle clause at the beginning. So here we took the verb read, reading slowly, reading slowly. I focused intently, and finally understood the book. And all of these parts here are color-coded according to what's a dependent clause here. We have the independent together with a fanboy, in this case the fanboy and. And this helps us to create that sort of natural flow. Here's another example. So Mariam opened the hatch to the ship. And because Mariam was the first person to ever walk on Mars, Mariam was filled with a sense of awe. All right, great. This is an interesting sentence, but we can also notice that I've used the individual's name 3 times. Sure, I mean, it's fine, but using it thrice like this, it adds a lot of unnecessary space where we could use other words at other places in our essays to express other parts. So how could we use participle clauses and compound complex sentences? Well, it could look like this. And here I've tried to show how you could divide it. We could remove Mariam's name twice and just keep it once here and help us to make it more efficiently written. As you can see, it's significantly shorter, but also it helps you to carry on expressing more ideas. We have the third form of the verb fill. Filled, we can see that there. So filled with a sense of awe. Mariam opened the hatch to the ship, for she was the first human being to ever walk on Mars. We have 4 here as the first fanboy. Or we can have another order where we have being the first human to ever walk on Mars. Mariam was filled with a sense of awe after opening the hatch to the ship, and so on, adding more information. So there are many ways we can do this, but a final word before we end this lecture relates to some of the more common mistakes that can happen when creating a participle clause. this terminology here, subject-verb agreement, means that the subject of a sentence, that the person or the individual or the thing that performs the verb has to agree with one another. What that means is that the different parts of a sentence must make sure that the subject and the verb, the tense of the verb, agrees with that part. So if the sentence is more complex and it includes several different parts, then it's easy to mix up the verb tense, and maybe it's hard to exactly understand who the subject is. I'm going to show you an example here. And this happens particularly when we use participle clauses, since we break up the sentence and we can sometimes confuse who is the subject. All right, let's look at the example right here. So it says, because the smartphone was found on the ground, it was handed to the police. Now this is a sentence with a passive structure where the smartphone is the subject of the sentence, and it was handed by someone else, right, to the police. And here we have two examples of participle clauses trying to express this sentence, where this one is incorrect and this one is correct. Here we can see it says found on the ground. Okay, so the subject of that part is the phone. And then it says found on the ground, I handed the smartphone to the police. Suddenly, the subject has changed to me. I mean, I'm the one who's handing the smartphone to the police since I found it on the ground, right? I mean, this makes perfect sense when you speak with someone. And I mean, technically certainly everyone would understand what you mean. However, if you want to make sure that it's perfectly correct academically, you want to make sure that the subject of both parts of the sentence, that the subject is the same. In this example right here, we can see found on the ground, the subject is the phone. The smartphone was handed to the police. And here it's still the phone who is the subject. And this is a little bit tricky, I understand that. And it's a great way to help you out to really understand how sentences are constructed and paying attention to who is the subject or what is the subject in this case, in order to make sure that the sentences stay correct and that there is correct subject-verb agreement. Great, students. Now, if you have any questions, please let me know. The next part of the lesson is practicing creating your own participle clauses. Good luck and have a good day.